Greg, it may be a different one. I'm going to raise her hand so you see which.
Now try.
Okay.
Sorry, I checked the wrong box.
Okay. No. Should we try again? Let's see. We're going to leave and then come back and see if that fixes it because we don't see the share.
Okay, let's try that instead. I just
Okay.
changed another option.
All right.
Okay.
Still not popping. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
There we go. Great.
Okay.
Zoom. And then share, yeah. And then that. Fantastic. Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you doing? It's good to see everybody again.
You want to introduce everybody?
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
actually going to
great.
get right into that. So we have a bit of an agenda here today. I'll jump right into the introductions. I'm Andre Golsorki, partner at Halden House with my wife, Autumn. We also have Adam Montalbano from Motor Design Shop, who is the project architect. Katie Brown from Stonehouse Lane, who presented last time, and then a new member who's joining us here, Matt Nelson from Jonathan Alderson Landscape Architects, a firm that we work with a lot on many projects. This has been obviously an evolution, this project. We had started sometime middle of the summer last year, presenting early concepts, presenting publicly January 8th. And using all of that time to hear feedback from all sort of constituents, community members, neighbors, tenants, HARB commentary from our last meeting, feedback from Gladwyne Civic Association, as well as some feedback and input from our informal conversations and direct conversations with township members. And so this has been an evolving process. We had a very fruitful discussion here last time, at least as far as we were concerned. There was a lot of really good feedback that came from that discussion. And we've taken all of that with everybody else's sort of input and feedback and incorporated that into a revised layout, which we'll review with you all today. We will go through the historic buildings, specifically the former Gladwyne Market building and what is referred to as the OMG building, and then discuss a bit about the village shops and the construction work that's going to happen there, reflective of a lot of what we heard last time that we were here. So with that, I'll hand it over to Autumn.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you again. So it was so valuable the last time we chatted and all the conversations we've had since with the community and different members. I wanted to start by just recapping some things we heard from you, and then we're going to kick it off with jumping into the overall plan. Last time we stuck to talking about the individual buildings, but giving the overall context will be really helpful. The first thing we heard from you and many other people is that, Gladwyne has a parking problem, and we weren't helping that with the last plan. We had a lot of buildings that brought a lot of excitement and a lot of new tenants. And when we added up all of the parking needed for those buildings, it really affected our green space that was so important to the village. And we took that to heart, and you'll see that we actually went ahead and removed a building, making it that we didn't need as much parking, which leads us to this idea of being more open green space to the village, which was a point that Philip brought up last time, and we were really inspired by it. We realized that we actually our green space kind of had its back to the rest of the village in our previous plan. And we've gone ahead and really opened that up to the village, so it really acts as an anchor between all of our tenants surrounding the village. So we're excited to share that. We also heard from you specifically about pulling back where appropriate. I think we were a bit excited about the porches, and we went ahead and pulled them back, and not every building has as large a porch as possible, but we maintained it a bit. So we thank you for that gut check. And then in general, the community input, we've gotten hundreds of responses in our questionnaire, a lot of excitement, a lot of questions, and it all really helped us develop a plan that is just really great, and it feels like it was a community effort. There's a lot of conversation about concern for buffering around our residential neighbors, which we've gone ahead and created a really great 20-foot buffer around all residential of mature trees. There was talk of a tenant mix that's really grounded in the own community's requests. And we went ahead and looked at our existing tenants and where that could actually fit within what they're offering, as opposed to bringing in so many new tenants. And a lot of conversation about this green space being so important, and almost making the village feel more open, more walkable, and allowing that green space to become the anchor that makes it all feel more connected. So with that, here is a look at our revised layout. A few things to call out here, and Matt from Jala will really dive in deeper to the plan itself, but one difference is the library drive really stays intact throughout construction and when this all opens up. We've gone ahead, we realized we actually didn't need to be disruptive and tear that up. We can just remove that fence and create a pathway so that it still feels connected to the library. Our future homeroom space is sitting here. Parking over towards 946, a very generous buffer surrounding all of our residential area. And the real hero is this green space opened up to Writer's Mill. And, we really took it to heart when Philip was talking about these ideas of the parade and a place for it to land. And we realized like the village as a whole kind of needed a landing place that everything's really anchored around. So you'll see that we found this central point where we're bringing in a water feature. It's modest. It's, really inspired by the equestrian history in Gladwyne and the active association. So you'll see some visuals of just a modest trough there. And then the park itself really envelops and reveals itself as more green space. And it acts as like a front lawn to the library, to homeroom, and to the Gladwyne Pharmacy. The Gladwyne Pharmacy you'll see is now in the old market building, which Perry and Carl are so excited about. And the plan is laying out so well in that space. So we're really excited about that. We'll get into the design of this building in a bit, but here's a revised perspective. So you can see that there's that water feature that really anchors everything. We're surrounded with the Gladwyne Pharmacy, the library, homeroom, and a future tenant over here. And there are also other elements within the green space that we're bringing in to help bring some height and kind of inspired, as you'll see, by some of the green spaces and farming history throughout Gladwyne, where there were outbuildings and this like ensemble of structures around an open green space. So with that, we will dive into all of that in detail, but we're going to start with our historic buildings. Preserving the character of 357 and 351 Writer's Mill is a big priority for us. We want to make it very clear when you arrive at our village which buildings are historic. And I think we realized in our last designs that our new construction was actually trying to look like our historic buildings a little too much. And we got feedback from the community that like Gladwyne is quirky and it is this collection of architecture and we should lean into that. So we're really looking to restore the historic buildings, start from what exists. Every design decision we're making, as Katie will get into, starts with what's there and what historically would have been there. So Katie's going to kick it off with some materials. Adam will jump into massing, and then we'll talk about the overall preservation approach before we dig into the new construction.
Everyone. So we had touched on this briefly during the last time we were here, but our approach is very grounded and simple, that we want to preserve, restore, and only introduce what's necessary to these buildings. So our priority is to retain as much original material as possible, including the stucco, wood elements, trim elements, if we can, shutters, and then repairing what we can salvage is always our first move. So we do need to replace some elements, and we want to align with what we know was historically there. So we have these historic photographs, which we're basing a lot of our information off of, because that's really all that we have. But we want to reintroduce some windows with the correct proportions, using the traditional materials like the stucco and the wood, and then avoiding any synthetic materials or overly refined systems whenever we can. So for both buildings, which I'm just talking about on this slide, and then I'll go into each one individually, we want to bring back those key character defining features. So the porch conditions and the proportions, which are aligned with what we believe was there historically. Cornice profiles, which have gone missing over the years. They're a little bit higher detail on the pharmacy, and then the former OMG building, they're a little bit more refined. And then adding in back shutters and making sure that the window rhythm is correct with what was there. So anytime that we're adding an intervention, which Adam will go into, it's going to be secondary to the original structure and scaled appropriately, which we chatted about and have made some revisions on. And then will not be competing with any of the historic elements that are there. So for 357, oh, there we go. Some things that we want to highlight is we would like to reintroduce the hidden gutters that are in alignment with the original detailing. So those are no longer there. And we think that that's important to the building. And also, we've read through all of your guidelines, obviously, and that's something that we know should be reintroduced into the building. We also want to restore those original cornice profiles, which were a little more detailed on this building and are important to the overall how the building reads. Reconstructing those porch elements, including the replication of the original columns, which are found actually throughout Gladwyne. If you look at a bunch of the houses that are there, you can see very similar profiles on those columns, and we'd like to reintroduce those. Repairing all of the operable wood shutters to be actually operable wood shutters. They're just placed on the building right now and are composite. Replacing the existing windows with the historically appropriate wood ones, and then
I'm sorry, could you say that last one again, just a little bit more into the mic?
replacing the wood windows that are there right now with the original wood windows, so that are double hung, and then preserving and reinforcing the overall form and massing of the building. As Autumn had mentioned, brought back the porch a little bit, so you'll see that in the following slides. And then this is our material palette, which is what we are planning on moving forward with at the moment. So we want to draw from what exists and we know it was there. So these wood shutters, which were louvered in the historic photographs, reintroducing those. The porch materials, we are hoping to go back with, I know that you specify the use of mahogany or a similar material. We would like to go back with some type of wood material for the porch flooring. At the roof, dimensional asphalt shingles, which were selected for their durability and ability to read similar to the traditional roofing that was there. The wood double hung windows, the profile of the trim and detailing would be wood as well. And then the historic stucco, right now, we have some issues with it. There's some cracking and deterioration, but restoring the stucco and then putting a compatible, breathable mineral coating on top to make it this neutral white color, which is similar to what's there right now.
Can I ask a quick question? What was the original shingle? Was it cedar? Okay. And if you so you're not interested in going with that? Is it going with the asphalt? Just
So
curious.
we've explored the use of cedar and asphalt, and at this moment in time, we're looking to move forward with the asphalt and in a color that would be compatible with the historic cedar shingles.
But did you consider perhaps any one of this, you've used the word synthetic in the previous slide and
Mhm.
suggested that there aren't any synthetics here, but of course the asphalt shingle is not an authentic material, so forgive me for asking if you
No, it's okay.
also considered something like the synthetic shake by Bravo or Da Vinci, which would be last a little bit longer than the traditional cedar shake, but really resemble that in its visual.
Yeah, we are open to those suggestions for sure.
I'm working with that right now.
I am too. It's,
Looks good.
Yep.
Yeah.
maybe not on a first floor porch,
Right.
where you can really see it, but anything that's second floor and above.
Could you just repeat the specific one that you mentioned?
There are two brands in particular that pretty much dominate the world of synthetic shakes and synthetic slates, and they are Brava and Da Vinci.
Thank
And
you.
well, we're not supposed to be passing up brand names, but those are the two that dominate the.
The original roof, I believe, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it had a cedar roof and then the porch had a metal
Yes, that's.
roof.
that would be
So
most
we could
expected.
consider the metal for the porch, so it's not as close to eyesight.
Yep.
Okay. So just jumping into discussion about massing, these are the same sort of format of diagrams that we looked at last time, but just to refresh everybody. So the images in white on the left are the existing condition. The images in the middle showing red are areas that are either being removed or modified, and then the images on the right side in blue are the proposed new massings. So as mentioned, we've, if you remember in the prior scheme, we had a much greater sort of wraparound porch coming around the side. That's been pulled back much closer to the original positioning. And then in this scheme, we are still proposing a rear addition on the building. However, it's much more in keeping with the location and scale of what's on the back of the existing building right now. One other sort of point to mention in the middle, on the upper middle image, at some point along the way, a sort of side shed was added onto the building, which would be removed. So the original condition could be sort of restored and that porch wrapped around. In terms of the massing on the back of the building, there is currently an addition, sort of an original addition that is on the back of the building, and you'll see that kind of transverse to the main ridge beam. And that sits a little bit lower on the back of the building. And so the new proposed addition essentially extends that massing out towards the back, maintaining the same roof pitch that's on that, and just bringing that a little bit further up towards the rear. Although we're trying to sit as not in line with the original ridge beam on the primary portion of the building, so that rear L sort of sits a little bit lower and is more deferential to the original massing. But that is to remove that inside corner, which also has the fire escape, that one-story portion that was a much later addition, and essentially square out and formalize that back space so it's much more usable for the pharmacy.
And then going into 351, so we are keeping the same restoration approach that I discussed for 357. And we want the palette to be aligned with 357, but also acknowledging that this is an individual building with its own character. So here, all of the wood profiles of the trim are a little bit more restrained than the other building. We are maintaining the porch floor that is there currently, which is a flagstone porch. Originally it was wood, but the condition of what is there now, there are no issues with it. So we wanted to maintain that. We also, again, repairing any original wood windows, which we found one on the addition, but mostly replacing with wood replacements to match the historic original windows. Putting in shutters, which here were a flat panel rather than louvered and would be wood. And then using the materials on the stucco that reflect the building's original character. So again, just stucco repairs were necessary, which are minimal. And then applying a breathable mineral coating to the exterior of the stucco. And then here's a very similar material palette. As you can see, the flooring is stone instead of wood, but going in with a similar colors and materials as we have on 357.
And then again, looking at the massing on this building, excuse me, the last time we sat together, we looked at what the addition would be like on the rear of the second floor. The existing condition is much more of a shed roof, kind of pitched back with a little bit of a raised portion, whether that was some kind of old sort of access to an upper floor or whatever it was. There was mention from the committee here last time we sat about maybe looking at this as sort of a large gable that was inset from that original shed roof to sort of retain and maintain that original character. So this is an updated massing kind of reflecting that comment. So this new sort of gable that's coming off the back is sort of inset about 5 feet off the sides and the back to be more respectful and a little bit more minimal in scale and massing off the back of the building.
And then this is just a summary of kind of what we've discussed, but we want to retain the overall form and massing, keep everything intentionally restrained. This is what the project is about, adaptive reuse of these buildings. So make sure that they can function today, they still retain their historic character, but they're able to be usable for the community and the tenants that go into these spaces. Preserving any of the character defining elements or reintroducing them as necessary. And then just taking into consideration the setting, landscape, and adjacent buildings and making sure that each building and space is respectful of the other ones, but also allows for a good relationship between them. And then something else which we had noted in our previous conversation, but we have executed on, is we wanted to make sure that Gladwyne was documented as it exists today before any changes are made. We all know how important historic records are of what's been done. So we partnered with local photographer Jeffrey Totaro, and he's very familiar and a very famous local Philadelphia architectural photographer. And he has already completed this series of photographs of the existing buildings in Gladwyne to capture them in their current condition. And this will create a baseline record for the moment before any work begins. And the intent is to donate these photographs to the local historic archives so that not only we have them for our use, but also the community has them for their use. And it'll contribute to the long-term visual record of Gladwyne and the community itself.
Okay, now we'll jump into new construction. So this is all about the village shops and our green space. We went back to the drawing board after hearing everyone's feedback and kind of getting permission to rethink this space. And we did many iterations of what this design could be, what the layout could be. And it felt important that we did start with history and have a reason behind our layout and behind the architecture. But what we didn't want to do, as we mentioned earlier, is start to lean into the existing architecture in the village itself and start to look a little bit copy-paste with what's new and what's old. We still wanted this architecture to feel rooted in history, though. So we started field trips and site visits, and we started with our green space, which is so important from what we're hearing from the community. And we wanted to really learn more about this legacy of landscapes that Lower Merion really grew from. We looked at Quaker farming communities and gentleman farms. We went to Idlewild and Rolling Hill, buildings and landscapes that work together as part of a larger vision. And what we found was these outbuildings and barns and service structures that were arranged around an open space, not this singular formal object, but more of an ensemble of buildings, which really inspired us. And we decided to really lean into that farming history of Gladwyne and strike the right balance. What we don't want to do is create false history. We also don't want to bring something in that is grabbing a lot of attention or stealing any kind of show with new modern architecture. So it was a delicate balance that we dove into.
So researching in some of the history, Gladwyne originated from large land holdings that were established by the Welsh settlers. And then the properties transitioned into more functional and refined gentleman farms in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So as Autumn had mentioned, we took some field trips out to these sites to get an idea of the character of these buildings, the proportions, things that we might be able to utilize within the design. So the character of Gladwyne kind of developed from open land and rolling topography and dispersed building patterns, buildings popping up as necessary for the use within the community. And that made the village itself kind of develop organically with the small commercial and service buildings that were there. And so in a similar way, there were buildings that were built on these different land tracts that were the farms based off of use and need, right? And locations were based off of, we need a barn here, we need this outbuilding here. And so we wanted to be thoughtful in what we were doing and then also take from these landscapes and these buildings the idea of how the structures sit within a landscape and respond to the land rather than stand apart from it.
And at the same time, we wanted to make sure we didn't fall into that trap of now we're creating a literal barn that's trying to look like it's been here forever. So back to that delicate balance, we started researching some contemporary interpretations and really fell into this merge of old and new, which felt really good in the context of Gladwyne Village, looking at these classic gable forms, maybe some newer, larger glass panes, but still going with materials that felt really soulful and more old world. Here's a look at our material palette. I will say this is one that we are excited to hear your feedback on. I think that this can be tweaked a little bit. So we look forward to that collaboration. But where we're at today is the use of cypress wood. We have an overgrouted stone in here, again, to bring in that more soulful technique and old world technique of a stone facade. We do have the certaintied presidential shake that's very dimensional in here. Open to roofing suggestions for this one. It's just important to us that it is different from our historic buildings, just to make that clarification. You'll see in our drawings that we are bringing in a color pop. We're leaning into a burgundy, and it might just be the influence in spending so much time on historic websites in our area, but we are still exploring and open to what that color is. We would like there to be a story behind it. You'll see that we've incorporated some black shutters, but in a different style. It felt like a nice continuation of the rhythm of the buildings that were around. Our awning on this one is steel, and we are bringing in some richer wood tones, but I will say that's more likely the benches that are up against the building and the planters, but because there'll be a constant presence, we wanted to drop that material in. So here is an early look at our elevations and isometric views of the building. So the HARB new construction guidelines really helped us and confirmed that we were on the right track here. What we didn't want to do is create a mass that felt so large. It really needed to be stepped. We needed a lower roof line, and we loved this idea of two masses coming together, even though it is this one building. So it almost feels as though this structure has been accumulated over time, like the other buildings that it surrounds. What we're really excited about with this architecture is as you walk around the building, it really reveals itself with these different experiences. No corner feels just like the other, but it still feels consistent. And something else we're paying close attention to is how to make sure this building feels human scale at eye level. So you'll notice that where there are entrances, we're bringing down roof heights, awnings that are breaking the height of the building in half. And then even at our larger heights, we're bringing in benches and plants and lanterns at eye level that really bring that scale down. Adam's going to jump into some scale comparisons. It was really important to us that this building were lower than the historic buildings around it. It felt like a nice nod of respect almost. We are at about 26.5 feet, and then the grade is about 4 feet up on one side of this building, so we still sit about 5 feet lower than the market building.
So as you can see, we have sort of an eye level, more of an elevational view, just showing some comparison. And these are approximate, but they do a good job at sort of giving you just referential scale between the homeroom building and some of the adjacent structures that are nearby, specifically the library. Yeah. So the homeroom building on the, oh, if you could just go back one. Yep. That's okay. There we go. So the homeroom building on the left, our sort of peak high point of the ridge beams around 26.5 feet, as mentioned, and we're trying to scale down the other portion of that building about 4 feet lower, give or take. It's about 22.5. Again, just to change the scale and massing of that corner piece. And just for reference, the library is around 37.5 feet, so quite a bit taller. And then the pharmacy building over on the right is roughly 30 feet, 30.5 feet. We're working with topography. We're still, obviously, that's not necessarily a challenge through the site, but it's something that is taking deep study, and Matt will sort of talk about that a little bit. But for anybody who knows the site, there is a bit of sort of slope and grading change across the site. So where we're giving you some numbers, those are really the numbers of the ridge beam down to its own foot or its own surface. It's not sort of consistent across the site. And then the next image here. And then, so this image is really just talking about the existing condition outlined in blue as adjacent to what's the new proposed structure outlined in red. So really the point of this is really to show, yes, we are proposing a taller building, not significantly so. There are some taller elements to the existing condition that's there. But this is a bit more in scale with the adjacent buildings, the library, the pharmacy, and so on, as opposed to a one-story structure across the site.
I just wanted to add that these elevations, aside from the buildings, there will be very mature trees here up against the residential and a 20-foot buffer. They are not in this drawing, but rest assured, we are not removing those.
All right, and we just wanted to reiterate that for the new construction, we've been very intentional about trying to align with the Lower Merion guidance for buildings in a historic context. The goal is compatibility and to make sure that the building fits within the district without trying to create that false sense of history and appear historic. So the design being grounded in the actual development patterns of this area, we think helps with that. And in treating it as a building that's part of a larger context also assists with that as well. We are borrowing some underlying logic from what has been in the area. So simple geometries, natural durable materials, and a strong relationship to the land that we're trying to maintain, and Matt will go into more. And making sure that the building itself is compatible in scale and massing, and is clearly contemporary, but also has a nod to what was historically in Lower Merion.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay with this? I've been told sometimes I don't speak loud enough in these meetings. Thank you so much for having the landscape architect join this. I know I wasn't here last time. We've had a lot of fun working with this team on this, sort of village green concept. Thank you for urging them to remove buildings and increasing the open space. That was very cool. So just the slide we have up here, just to give you a feeling and a vibe of what the open space, the green space might be. Some of the things we're looking at, obviously seating, simple natural materials. We want to incorporate water into this design. We have an amphitheater in here, which we think ties nicely to the library, and there's some program elements there. Native plantings, naturalistic, sort of informal planting design is what we're looking at here. There's no formal rows of trees, there's no formal hedges or anything like that. So just this slide helps to kind of set up, what the feeling of the landscape could be. So we go to the next slide. Okay, here's the site plan, and I can speak to some of the grading things that Adam was mentioning. But just to kick things off, our open space is really anchored. It's framed by the new homeroom building, the pharmacy across the street, and the library to the north. So we see this as kind of a sort of a central green, village green concept for the site. Just some other aspects of the site before we go into the green space design. We have the new parking lot off of Youngsford. That's at 946 Youngsford, providing parking spaces for the new homeroom building. And we have across the street at the pharmacy some reconfigured parking there as well. So really, this is the park is really meant to feel very open and welcoming. So the existing condition with that one-story building, L-shaped, wrapping the corner, is we're opening that up, on Writers Mill specifically. So the space that has the fountain, the water feature, that is engaging with street level. That is, there's no steps, there's no walls there as there currently are. So that's really down at street level, and then you can make your way up into the central green space. So you kind of have this dual level open space, and then homeroom sort of nestles into that grade. So one side of homeroom is engaging with the open space, the central green. The other side of homeroom is easily accessible down to sort of street level at the corner and into that sort of fountain space. So just wanted to point that out. Let's see. We have circulation through the space via a walkway. It kind of starts at the lowest point, which is at the intersection. You can see the crosswalks at the intersection. There's a pathway that goes sort of up and curves around above, plan north of the gazebo that we were showing, up into that central green space. So that's a fully accessible path. And then you can walk around that green space via a path as well. In the top left corner of the plan is where we have the amphitheater. So we're thinking this could be a great way to engage with the library, different programming that could happen in this space. That's sort of, that could be an anchor in that corner. Along the property boundaries, we have a 20-foot wide landscape buffer. Again, that'll be very sort of naturalistic, layered approach. It's not going to be a hedge along there. We have more than enough space to make that feel like sort of what we would call a stratified edge that feels very natural, kind of ramping up to the largest plant material along the back and then sort of cascading down closer to human scale as you get, toward the pathways. If you go to the next slide. So the planting strategy, now it's early here, of course, but we're looking at these sort of historic village greens, which are a lot of open lawn and shade trees. Those are kind of the two things. So there's a lot of, we would look to oak trees, elms, maples, some of these like bigger, larger shade trees that would, last 100 years and actually provide some benefit to the local ecosystem as well. So everything is sort of informal in the landscape design, even down to the landscape beds are all very curvature and feel human scale. It'll be a combination of shrubs, perennials, grasses, sort of predominantly native, sort of relatively drought tolerant. We understand maintenance concerns and things of that nature. So, and then the materials, well, we'll get into the materials actually if you go to the next slide. There it is. So this just gives you a sense of the plantings. Again, I think that that image on the top left is a great example of like open lawn, large canopy tree, and like a naturalistic edge to that space. So I think that really kind of captures it. We got bottlebrush buckeye in here. In the next picture, we have hollies, we have red buds, we have dogwoods, a mixture of perennials for color and warm and cool season grasses. We've got deutzia, we've got viburnum. So we're going to mix in a lot of predominantly native, naturalistic, strong plants that can last a long time into this design. Next slide. Okay, and then for the hardscape materials, we're looking at using a crushed stone. That's a Delaware River Jack, local to the area. The wall stone is you know, we're still working through that. This is showing a stone from Chester County. This is more of a field stone, dry stacked, you know, sort of raked back mortar joints that you don't see. Now that might evolve to align more with the architecture as we go through this design, where we're really expressing the mortar. But we're drawing inspiration from sort of the farm properties, fieldstone, Avondale stone, sort of dry stacked look for the site walls. We're looking at red brick, we're looking at PA bluestone, and we're also looking at an exposed aggregate concrete. This is an early look at the palette. It could evolve over time.
And so in talking through all of these different aspects of the new building and the landscaping, we just wanted to reiterate that it's really about creating this living connection between the past of the village and the community, and then also the present, and making sure that it's integrated and useful for everyday life and people who reside in the community, people who are visiting the community. And something that's important to us is making sure that education and an understanding of why we're doing what we're doing and what the landscape and buildings are is important. So we want there to be like subtle interpretive elements throughout the buildings, kind of the idea of creating that village feel with this greenscape and available opportunities for community-focused programming, but then also letting people kind of discover things on their own and making it feel like it's intentional and has always been there and has always been a big part of the community.
We're also in general really interested in like encouraging the community to slow down a little bit. Right now, the village shops, you kind of like, you run in for an errand and you head out. And by giving all of the library, the pharmacy, homeroom, this front yard, you stop in and then you spend time with people in person. And that feels really important for now and really important for the future.
And then here we also found an opportunity for more formal programming and within the space. So talking about using subtle plaques and markers to explain the history of Gladwyne. Personally love a historic marker, so or potentially incorporating some photographs that we found that are historic as well. Creating those moments of history where you're really feeling like you're stepping back into a shop when you go to the pharmacy, something that has always been a community space. And then the farm and village evolution storytelling throughout time. So why this space is important, why we are doing subtle nods to the farming and horse community that was so prominent and is now very much not prominent, or prominent in small ways within the community still. Using that landscape as an education, so the native plants that Matt was speaking to, the orchard and meadows and trees that he's using, and using the material as a storytelling aspect, so the stone and the wood, and making it feel very natural and lived in. For community programming, there's a hope that this will be a space where people, like Autumn said, will stop and spend time, but also given the opportunity for potentially seasonal markets, workshops, different educational partnerships within the community and the library, which is adjacent. And then making sure that there is that everyday engagement, the hope that families and visitors will gather in these spaces and make it really feel like a community. A lot of the feedback that we got when we did send out the questionnaire was that people really were looking for a space to gather. And they had the park down the street for the kids sometimes, but they wanted space to be able to meet friends, bring their family, and spend time within the community and really bring back the life to Gladwyne that has kind of transitioned over the years and we all, I think, would like to see again.
I would like to begin the discussion just by saying, first of all, Philip, when I think about the time that we've shared on HARB and your many wonderful points and whatever, I don't think anything that you've ever said has had a bigger impact than your description of 4th of July in Gladwyne. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I mean, talk about bringing what you discussed to life in a layout. I'm just overwhelmed. Also, the adjective soulful has never been used in this room before. But anyway, thank you for all your hard work on this. And really, Philip, it started with that wonderful description. This is a true gift. And I know there'll be some, discussion about specifics, but I view this as a gift and thank you so much.
So I just want to really briefly, this team has a lot of steps to go through in terms of zoning and making sure that the frontage requirements are met, all of those things. And that will come, before the planning commission, zoning hearing board, many different reviews, the extra curb cut off Youngsford Road as well. So just keep in mind that those things will be reviewed by other bodies in this township. And so I'm sure there are lots of opinions in the room about that. Feel free to express them. But as far as HARB goes, the review is only really limited to the architecture, the impact on the historic district, and all the things that we normally speak to in here.
I also thought it was an excellent presentation. I do have a couple questions. The first is, what is the square footage for the new homeroom building? And what's the square footage for the buildings that are being taken off the property, which are the old homeroom building?
Yeah.
And whatever else is there?
Do you have that readily available? I think it's,
The new one is 2,500 and the old one was 3,200.
Oh, okay.
oh, well, just that one side though.
Yeah, but the whole building.
Yeah, but so the whole assembly of all of Village Shops versus existing home. I think it's, yeah.
Okay,
We'll get that answer in a
yep,
second.
okay. And then, right, the old building and then the new building, the full square footage of the new building.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think before you had proposed a larger building, is that correct, or square footage wise, or
So
no?
relative to the existing Village Shops, we were reducing square footage of the footprint by sort of opening up that
Right.
passageway between the two of them. We've now gone materially further
Right,
and gotten rid of that entire side.
right, okay, got it, thanks.
And, that was for the benefit of the green space, but also just thinking about what the village can support. As Autumn sort of started out, by saying, and as Ed had mentioned at the prior meeting with public comment, we had to start from a couple different angles, but parking was a significant consideration in all of this. What can the village support? And, in the current circumstance with the PNC space, the first floor of the market building, OMG, and also an adjacent property across the street, all being vacant. In its current condition, the village has some challenges with sort of, with parking. And so we did not want to exacerbate that. We wanted to be considerate of that and try to resolve those
Mm.
challenges.
So what's your parking ratio going to be when you're done?
So we have, when we're sort of going through some iterations, and there's a informal LDC submission that's going in on Friday. But the parking availability next to the village shops, or next to the homeroom, exceeds what the square footage would
Required. Oh, that's
would
nice.
indicate.
That's nice. Thank you. Who's in charge of maintaining the green space?
So we will be establishing a fund for that, as well as an arrangement where the cash flow from the properties is actually being provided for the maintenance of the actual park.
Oh, very, thank you.
And that will not be, just to be clear, a responsibility of the tenant. So we wouldn't be, it wouldn't be folded into their rent anyway. That would be an impossible scenario.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think you solved a lot of issues from our last presentation, and uncoupling the library from this. I think, I know I'm involved with the library, and I think from our standpoint, as my membership there, I think it solves a lot of concerns that we had. So, and the parking was the next thing. I'm glad to hear that you think that's been resolved, or it's heading in that direction. That's great. I think this is a really good presentation, and looking forward to next steps.
Thank you.
So I just want to point out an interesting aesthetic observation. So you noted that you explored the area, got a feel for the architecture of old Gladwyne. The architecture of new Gladwyne, and I'm thinking specifically of a large estate on Monk Road that was recently subdivided into a few lots. The Historical Commission reviewed 2 separate new construction projects on those lots for very large new homes. And the 2 separate people with their own separate architects, they both came back with very similar aesthetics, similar gray stone with peaked roofs and big windows. And this is very similar to what you're coming up with. So, the kind of Gladwyne of 2020, the 2020s look is in the air, I guess.
Nice.
Well, also in this, in the April, May, or March, April edition of Antiques Magazine, there is a Gladwyne home featured that has a super private collection of Americana that happens to be on Wrights Mill Road, that they actually brought in a barn and attached it to the house. And it's fun to see that if you, yeah, it's within walking distance of where you are. So very fun.
Which is 8100?
So 8,100 is the current footprint
Oh,
versus
okay.
the 2,500 of the proposed, a lot smaller.
Right. Well, that helps with the parking.
Yeah. No, just the. I was
It
talking
just
about
helps
just the building, yeah.
Yeah, it just helps with parking issues.
So is homeroom going to have that whole building to itself?
The first floor will be all homeroom. I mentioned in the beginning, after we got the feedback from the community of everything everyone was looking for, like a more robust gift shop and some kid store was a big one, a cafe. We looked at our existing tenants. We looked at the pharmacy, and we were like, they have a gift shop and kids stuff. Let's actually lean in and help them re-merchandise and make that more apparent. And similarly with homeroom, and Henry's ambitions, we're like, this is the perfect spot for a cafe, and especially on the green. So we're actually working with Henry to take over more of a footprint. It will be his coffee shop, lean in a little bit more to a bakery aspect. He will have grab and go and prepared foods, and he's really excited to create more of an offering for the community, like pick up Thanksgiving meals and just like really be that center hub that's supporting the community in different ways. And So there'll be prepared foods and some grab and go. It won't be a market in the sense where it would compete with McCaffrey's or making sure that they really have separate offerings. But he will be increasing his hours into early evening, which feels really nice sitting on the green space as well. And then we have room for another tenant upstairs.
What, would that be an office tenant most likely, or, yeah?
It's, we've talked about just having sort of like a conference space for ourselves. It's not a big space.
Yeah.
We've also talked about, is that an opportunity to have workshops, or it's like a flexible space that we could have some pop-up experiences from vendors in the community. So it's a decent footprint, TBD on who goes up there.
I still had some questions about taking down 946 and putting parking there, and wanted, and I can list those for you. But, you know, with the intent of maybe including parking in the green space, some of it, so that you don't have to use as much possibly in the 946 lot. For one thing, I looked at the civil drawings, and there's some really large existing trees, maples and pines, and those really contribute to the atmosphere now. And I don't know how large, of course, trees will grow, but right now there's a lot of landscaping there. I also technically looked at the slope, and there's a 6-foot slope from the adjacent property line across 946. There's a 6-foot slope to get down to the existing 831 dimension. 6% parking crosswise on 6% is not a good idea. Doors slam open. It's difficult. It doesn't meet crosswalk conditions for ADA. And I don't know if you all have looked at that or not, but I don't know how you're going to do it without a retaining wall. And so, you know, those are my two biggest concerns about the parking there. It's just going to be difficult to do. And the loss of the existing large trees is, you know, not great. But have you looked at reducing the green space a bit to include the parking? Now, since it's less parking, have you looked at anything to put the parking there?
Yeah, if you want to speak to that specific question, I can, yeah.
I'll speak to. So as you can imagine, we've gone through 1,000 iterations of this. When you provide access to that parking in that space, the necessary, particularly relative to a new construction environment with, you know, and following all of the appropriate regulations and constraints that we're going to have from the township perspective, there are appropriate turnaround spaces, driveway width, exit view, sight lines, so on and so forth. You are significantly reducing the green space far more than you can imagine. It gets to a point at which that just becomes a sliver of sort of green space that, you know, doesn't really meet what it is that I think everyone is looking for. And particularly, you know, we're taking what is currently a building and a structure and putting in green space, which we think is a better sort of outcome, versus taking away a building and putting in asphalt. And so it's challenging as you sort of try to navigate around that building. You have to have the driveways and the appropriate sort of parking. That green space is basically eliminated.
Can we go to the slide or a slide that shows what we're talking about?
Okay.
What Donna's concern is, so that we can all see the.
Yeah.
So are you going to have to excavate the parking area? And where are the trees that she's talking about located within that parking area today? Like, what would specifically, where's the location of the trees that would be lost? And would you then excavate the 4 or 5 or 6 feet and have that retaining wall around it and maybe drains or whatever for the.
Tension here, and I think, you know, I don't want to get ahead of myself on this. You want to speak to it? Yeah. Thank you.
So yes, we would regrade that entire 946 site. We would utilize a retaining wall at the edges to kind of drop that grade down so that we're not dealing with a 5 or 6% parking lot slope. We'll get that closer to 3 or 4%. We're kind of constrained by, obviously, Youngsford. We have to meet back up where the curb cuts are. So it'll kind of, the parking lot will essentially follow the same grade that Youngsford follows. And the existing trees are kind of closer to the property line. There's some out closer to Youngsford. They don't really show on here. There's some closer to the back retaining wall. So we totally understand that this project is removing those trees. In terms of replacement ordinance through Lower Merion, we will be meeting and exceeding that replacement of trees just based on what we're showing here. We haven't, we've done those calculations. We don't have them in this presentation, but yeah, we'll be kind of exceeding that with as many trees as we can get in here, basically. So
Are there any that could be retained, or not really because of what you have to do to regrade the site?
because of the grading work,
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be possible. Because well, if you right now the driveway that goes out to Youngsford next to the village shops that has that existing retaining wall that kind of comes all the way out almost to the street, and then there's a big grade change there. So we'll be sort of excavating that down and removing a portion of that retaining wall and then wrapping it around 946 to make this work.
So 946 is going to be effectively lowered relative to the property to its left,
That's correct. Yeah.
which is Ed's house.
I don't know if I like, but that's intended to not only sort of meet the grade, increase the accessibility to the homeroom and park space, but also to further amplify the buffering that exists between that lot and the residential property. So it'll sit materially lower, retaining wall, screening, fence. I mean, it's gonna, even the vehicles, and we thought about sort of like where headlights might sit, where the roof lines of the cars might sit, it's gonna sit significantly lower relative to the adjacent residential.
Good.
And
The new retaining wall, so the property to the left is at 837. The topo's 837. You've got to get down to 831. So that's the 6 feet. I'm just wondering where the retaining, in between that, you get a 6% slope. I'm just wondering where the retaining wall is going to be relative to the property next door and relative to the green buffer that you're showing on the left, on the far end. Just so we understand kind of. what
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
gonna
Sorry, I
look
don't have all of the spot elevations on this plan. So the retaining wall would be as close to the property line as we can put it. I forget what the exact offset is required of us, but we'll put it there. And it'll essentially be the height it needs to be to hold back grade that is on the outside of the
About
retaining
3
wall.
feet.
What's that?
About 3 feet high.
Yeah, yeah, that's correct.
And the trees then are going to be lower than the property too. It's just, I'm just wondering about the impact of the
Yeah.
change in the forms of things. The trees will be,
The trees would be set
Lower.
down at, yeah, closer to parking lot grade, lower than the adjacent property. Yeah. Yeah.
And so then is there the retaining wall is there, then there's the trees, there's not another wall between the trees and the parking lot?
No.
Okay, so no worry about the roots of the trees, okay, with the wall?
No,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be worried
Okay.
about that. But yeah, we can explore shifting the retaining wall such that the relationship of the landscape to the adjacent properties is better, more
or
natural.
stepped or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
One other note, you'll see a change the next time you see this plan, but there are dumpsters sitting here in this drawing and they will not be there. They'll be closer to our building. So this will be, we'll work on getting that retaining wall closer to the parking lot so the trees can sit up higher and we can just pretend you didn't see that. The dumpsters will not be there.
I just want to echo what Donna said. She basically took the words out of my mouth. I think, the loss of a non-contributing resource in the district is debatable, right? But the loss of the trees while it doesn't seem like it is necessarily in the purview of the HARB, they very much contribute to that village feel. And so while we may be replacing them in quantity, we can't replace them in caliper or height, right? And so it's very, that, the smaller trees in combination with leveling of the land and a retaining wall really kind of has a new build vibe to it. And so, if there's a way that that could be mitigated, I think that would really help to maintain the feel of Gladwyne Village.
But Betsy, I mean, the whole thing together and the sensitivity that's gone into, it's not maintaining. I mean, if you look at the photos of what Gladwyne Village looks like now, I love the place, but it's kind of down on its heels. And this is a very thoughtful, complete reimagining of it. And yeah, there are some corners and whatever that are going to need extra sensitivity, but I think actually this group has redefined what Gladwyne Village is going to be for the next 100 years. And it has much more of a village feel now than it does, when you come out of that, you go in the one-way thing into a shopping thing that, a third of it isn't even occupied, and you come out a little one-way thing, and, I mean, that to me is not a village feel. So I think they've taken massive steps to say, we are completely rethinking this, reimagining, and I think you're going to end up with just a fabulous, you're going back to being a village as opposed to some stuff that, quite frankly, over time, I think has either deteriorated or been jerry-rigged, for use of a better word. And I can't get too upset. I mean, I see your point, but you're talking about the far corner, and I think they're also being very sensitive to the residential, the residents that surround this. So I think in terms of just a village, this is how a village works, in my mind.
I don't think Betsy's comments are in contrast to.
I think they are. I think they are. I think you're saying trees. I mean, look at the plantings that are going into this, right? I mean,
I think Donna and Betsy were just, just warning against the possibility of getting towards something that would be a larger than what has been discussed retaining wall. I mean, there is currently either a 30-inch or so retaining wall between the drive lane and the 946 property. And so clearly, if you just took that and pushed it all the way over to the very left side of the 946, you're going to end up with like a 6 foot. And I think there are locations for stepping the grade down in a more natural way than ending up with something that might, be more evocative of a less sensitive commercial development that we've certainly seen anywhere in the general region. I think there's just a note of caution to make sure that we do that in the way that you've described it.
I don't mean to be mean-spirited, but to me, yes, I love trees. Believe me, I love trees, but there's one tree does not a village make.
Well, I think, at least from my perspective, I think the consensus I'm hearing from the board is that everybody thinks the project looks fantastic, and it does. I don't think that means we can't discuss the details about it, though, or ways to improve it. And I think the point of what people are saying on the board is, yes, we love it, but let's dig down. To not use a gardening expression, but let's dig down and see whether there are some mitigations to the things that give us a little bit of discomfort, which doesn't mean people don't love the project. I think they're just saying, let's take a look at these details. And one of the things I was wondering about when Betsy was making her comment, and Donna, and you as well, Julie, was one of you had mentioned bringing in mature trees or having mature trees there. So I'm wondering if we could talk about how what trees would need to be removed to do this project, and what trees would be brought in that would not be just saplings, which is a concern because it takes so long for many trees to grow, other than there are some really fast growing ones. But what are your thoughts about what you would be bringing in and where you'd be putting it?
I'll pass the mic to you, Matt, in a second. I did just want to clarify one thing. And Matt, you can also correct me if I'm wrong, but although this is 6 feet from here to this corner, we are up at 4 feet at this location, right? The grading from here to here. So this point to here is actually 2 feet. So I just wanted to clarify that that retaining wall wouldn't be the full 6 feet high because we're already making a lot of progress down in this corner. I think we would all agree it's a really interesting and valid point just to be cautious and do some studies of those tallest trees. There might be some opportunities and it's definitely worth a study. I have a feeling Matt can't speak yet to the exact number of replacements, but I will pass the mic to him.
Actually, I was talking about from the corner, from the existing drive, which is at 381. Yeah, from there to the adjacent property is 387. So that is, according to the civil drawing, that is 6 feet.
You know, I'm wondering, could you, maybe this seems extreme, but could you do an overlay of the existing large trees, whether it's 2 or 5 or 6 of them, whatever, onto the parking lot so we see where they are and whether there's an opportunity to just even save one of them and park around it, or one in the middle or something like that, that would give a sort of nod to trying to save some of them. And that could be a nice element if it doesn't really get in the way of all the cars.
And perhaps
Yeah.
I should have started by saying, I really do think this is such an improved plan, and I didn't say that because everyone else already did it. But, you know, the landscaping, I could just die for. So it's really nice, but, you know, I was just wondering if it could be smaller and move some of that parking over there.
Yeah, I just want to note, I mean, obviously there's a lot more detail to develop here, doing the overlay, looking at the existing trees, and also qualifying what we mean by mature trees and the volume of them, how they will be placed. I think that's all detail we need to get into. And there is no project, there is no environment where we enjoy seeing like saplings or small trees going in and it feeling like a new construction. So we are entirely aligned in that regard, and we'll do is, you know, and provide that detail and do our best to demonstrate that we're going to try to show as much maturity as we can at the outset.
Yeah.
But I guess, Donna, what sort of rankled me about your comment was, okay, let's move the parking into the green space. I really like that green space. I love the fact that, you know, the library can use it can use it too for its programming. I mean, I think that is just so fantastic. So to me, you know, moving the parking sort of anywhere else is like, you know, I just love that centerpiece there. And I think a lot of thought has gone into that. Right. It would be one big long, if you used the library, it would be one big long strip of parking on the left side. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree, you know, that's not
I mean,
great
but
either.
we have, okay, okay. Fair enough. We've explored so many things, and we've arrived at this. Oh, by the way, including underground parking. We went all the way down the path of underground parking. We priced it, we designed it. Yeah, right. It became, yeah, it just was the wrong approach, but we have gone down all the paths. And so we've arrived at this through this very complicated matrix of preservation, sensitivity to the community, our tenants, the neighbors. I mean, we heard feedback from the HOA behind us as well, and considered like what their view, what their experience is going to be. So it is an entirely valid question and point that, you know, if you were in the room during all of the iterations, you'd sort of understand the things that we attempted to do alternative to this, and this is like the best assembly of everything.
On your grading question, that's a fair one. I'm looking at the engineering plan now, so I have real numbers. So we were actually, yeah, so 387 is in the adjacent property, and the way we have the retaining wall and the landscape on our side of the retaining wall, that landscape is actually sloped such that the retaining wall is not 6 feet tall. It's about
Right.
2.5 feet, 3 feet tall. And then the landscape sort of slopes back down to the parking lot.
Mhm.
So, but we'll look at different ways of terracing that potentially. And then
In
quick,
terms of like, I'm just, because it's a district and you have to prove, you're gonna have to do a study on the impact on adjacent properties, especially if they're class 1 or 2 even.
Yeah.
I was just trying to see how any impact could be mitigated on that property.
yeah, absolutely. Just a note on the different sizes of trees, just to reiterate what Andrea was saying. Often on our projects, just from our standpoint as a landscape architect, mixing sizes of new trees makes it feel more natural. It feels obviously less new construction. We've all seen new construction where it's just 2-inch caliper, maple trees, all over the place, and it's very obvious. So from our design standpoint and from an ecological standpoint, it's kind of nice to have different ages of trees as opposed to, okay, all these trees are 5 years old from the nursery and they're all going to grow at the same rate. We want to actually have a different age
And
mix.
that's fun. I mean, for my husband and my 60th birthday, we planted a tree on our property that is 60 years old. So it is aging with us. I mean, it's very nice and it's thriving. It is thriving. But yeah, that's fun. The existing trees are like 60, 70 feet.
Of course, yeah.
And it's gonna,
Yeah.
there will be there'll be, a change.
I think we need to do a better job of documenting what those trees are, kind of showing what that impact that we're losing potentially is, or if we can preserve.
Yeah, I can't shut it off. It's silence.
Just ignore.
It'll stop in a second. I'm hesitant to say anything, given what Julie said. I think maybe I should, while I'm ahead, keep my mouth shut. However, I can't control myself sometimes, and this is one of them. This is a big improvement. I am surprised and like where it's heading. I'm still getting serious indigestion about how the parking is solved. I understand it, and it does work well. And I've always wondered, how are you going to solve this parking issue and also address the desire for some open space? I don't like the loss of the property and the intrusion that this makes on this particular residential neighborhood, and I'm not happy about it. But there's one area where I think you still have lost an opportunity, and that is how you deal with Writers Mill Road between what you're proposing to be the location of the Gladwyne Pharmacy and the open space. That's an area, the street, as I explained it, I guess back in February, the street is used during these events. And it can I think, very easily be incorporated in terms of addressing paving material and how that blends into the sidewalks and those kinds of features that would, I think, enhance where this is all headed. I think that a lot of people are going to like this, with the exception of what it does to this residential community, where you are proposing to eliminate a residence. I'm not at all comfortable with that, but I honestly don't have a better solution. In your original scheme, from the best I could tell, you were saying you were going to drive around the north end of the library and come around, and that all of us who have dropped off a book or have gone and parked at the library to spend a few minutes know that is just about wide enough to get a car in. And it didn't make any sense. It wouldn't make any sense to do it that way. So this is a big improvement. I think that it will be received more heartily than the words were expressed at your last elementary school presentation. But I'm looking for more. I think this is moving in the right direction, but I would like to see more.
What's more, Philip? What's
More.
more? What's more?
I'd like to see the Writersville Road incorporated into the plan. Somehow treating that piece of Writersville Road as a piece of the occasional open space. Basically from Youngsford Road up to the library, past the library, that section.
Yeah, so just one comment there, and there's potentially evolutions here, but the intention here on Writer's Mill across from the pharmacy, we're actually bringing that grade down relative to what it is today. Currently, there is sidewalk, retaining wall, slope, and then basically a sidewalk that sits up against the village shops. In this environment here and what's being proposed, we are bringing that grade down and creating a green space that is actually accessible from Writer's Mill that is currently not.
Right.
And so it's actually creating a landing spot for folks who are walking, pedestrians who are walking, and then providing an opportunity to go up into the park. But we believe this creates a little bit more programming at the Writer's Mill grade level that doesn't exist today.
Right.
At the pharmacy and that water feature down here are all the same grade.
Yeah.
Well, I think it should be illustrated. Something should happen to the street so that it's part of that whole landscape.
Yeah, I think we've just not gone the bit further to sort of show those, that integration of
Right.
that. But the intention here and this plan is communicating that there's sort of space at the front of the pharmacy, space to the sort of right in this plan of the pharmacy, and also now this green space at the grade of Writer's Mill to create this space where you don't have to necessarily go up into the buildings or up into the park and still enjoy that green space. But we can do a better job of articulating that.
I mean, it could just be a wider pedestrian crosswalk that's further, down, further toward the library between, a change of surface or something. I don't know if you can change the road or not in the township.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that go on in that conversation. We actually, in an original plan, we had shown a crosswalk between the two of them. There are, concerns that will exist from sort of other bodies about the dangers of creating a crosswalk in the middle of the road relative to a intersection. There's a whole separate conversation that's happening around that intersection and around how to make it more pedestrian friendly, how to bring the sort of the connection points in so the distance that you're walking as a pedestrian becomes shorter.
Right.
Those are things that preceded us. Those are things that also live outside of our authority, and someone else has to lead that. But we know that's a conversation happening at the township level to improve the sort of the walkability there.
Do you know if the school bus is that still the pickup point for the school bus? My kids used to have to wait right on that corner in between the pharmacy.
We have some space that we're occupying in the second floor of the market building now. We don't see that
You don't see.
any longer. There's a SEPTA bus that obviously picks up there. There's a bunch of other truck situations and deliveries and such that are happening that are sort of running into each other that we're trying to resolve through some of our plan, but we don't see the school bus.
Yeah, the school bus used to park toward Youngsford on Writer's Mill and right in front of the pharmacy. Well, it didn't park long, just long enough for the kid, and the kids would all congregate there.
So I don't want to say matter of factly, but we haven't seen it, but we can confirm.
Yeah.
The last item I have is a plan that was given to me by a resident. They wanted to use me as a conduit to get this idea to you. And it's largely about pedestrian connections and the importance of making a conscious plan for those connections. I know who it is, but they don't want to be identified, so I will pass it on to you.
Thank you.
I think that it has some characteristics in it that you can also add in addition to what I've suggested in terms of providing some illumination to that part of Writers Mill Road that would be useful, particularly during parades and other gatherings of the community.
And the roads do open up at that intersection. They get wider. Even Youngsford, it splays into the intersection. So back when Gladwyne Pharmacy was putting the little stone seating wall in front, there was, the community, the Civic Association hired a civil engineer who came up with the idea of adding, very similar to that plan, narrowing it down so people would actually stop at the intersection because someone had done a study and people just don't even stop sometimes.
We are entirely on board. It's not getting into that involving changing the sort of the width of the road and the sidewalk that is adjacent to other people's buildings is not a thing that we can lead.
Mhm.
It is already it's already a conversation that's happening. People have asked, well, can we be supportive and participate in this? We would be happy to get behind it 100%, but we can't be the leader of that because it involves things that are outside of our authority.
But that said, you're proposing here on the piece of ground where you're suggesting that the pharmacy to go, that corner comes out, and it doesn't come out that far now. The sidewalk goes right in front of the building, and cars park on the sidewalk now. So you may want to back off of that based on
Yeah.
what you said, but I do like what you're suggesting here.
Fair enough. I think that there's a couple things. I mean, one is that, there's a discussion about what is happening when you're coming down Youngsford to make a right onto Writers Mill and that particular radius in front of the guardhouse. And that has been one that has been brought up a lot. And that is one that we would love to support, but is also across the street. There are some modifications and adjustments we want to make in front of the pharmacy or the future proposed pharmacy building. That's a property that we have some control over. And so I was sort of speaking to like things that are happening on corners that we don't have influence over, but we would love to participate in.
I know when this issue came up before, the guardhouse didn't want that narrow, they didn't want the sidewalk to intrude into the cartway because people drive up and people get out of their cars right there and go into the guardhouse. Also, some service vehicles park right there, providing food supplies and all to the guardhouse, and cars can go past them. So it was like, messing with things that are working that got in the way.
Yeah, I would argue that they are not working. I'm
It's
there.
working now.
I drop
some people.
my kids off every morning and those trucks come at 9 o'clock in the morning at the same time the buses are leaving Gladwyne Elementary and people are leaving Gladwyne Montessori and the truck parks there and you cannot get around them. You have to cross the L line a bit and now you have a truck blocking your view coming from Writers Mill where everyone's leaving Gladwyne. It's a mess.
Yes.
In this plan, we actually have proposed that there is a loading zone in front of homeroom, wide enough for the delivery trucks to stop and to get out of the road to resolve some of the traffic issues and some of the safety issues that exist at that intersection. And that is not intended just for the benefit of homeroom. That is intended for the benefit of all of our neighbors and particularly for the guardhouse to have a truck to pull there.
But then they'll have to cross that hellacious intersection with all the stuff in there.
Right now they are, if you observe, and maybe we can bring some video of it, they're coming out from all different sides of the truck and putting onto dollies and then going into the building. One truck pulls down Youngsford, stops at the stop sign, and then backs into the parking lot, and the other one parks in front of it on
Yeah.
Youngsford. It's not ideal.
Yeah.
So we are trying to incrementally resolve some issues that exist. Yeah, right, right. But I know that there are conversations that are happening outside of us that want to resolve some of these things, and we're happy to participate.
Yeah, well, I guess my last comment would be if you could have some illustrations of the pathways, like the sidewalks and the connections and the crosswalks and how all of that is related to entrances or pieces of open space.
Sure.
We're having to draw that out of looking at the illustration, but I think that it should be part of your conscious thoughts about how all this goes together. I know you're focused on parking and how to service and get people in and out, but I think the pedestrian connections are equally important.
Yeah, it's a great point, and we are actively building this out in a 3D model, so there will be views from on the ground at all angles, and we'll better illustrate. I think the call out to make this area feel more connected is a really great one. I think there's more opportunity there. We're, to your point, like on the right track, but I think we can do a little bit better there. But the next time you see this work, there'll be more eye-level perspectives from different points.
And then will there be a lighting plan with the design of the lighting fixtures or structures that we'll see as well? So then I have a clarifying question for Greg. So today, we've looked at this, we've given a lot of accolades, we've given also some specific suggestions and feedback that could be helpful as well. And then are we being asked to do anything other than that today?
No,
Okay.
no action needs to be taken.
Yep.
We do need to leave time for public comment.
Yep, so let's do that.
I just had one question before we do the public. Has there been any movement with Pico and the power lines?
Yes, this comes up, it's this final question asked at every time we talk about this. So we went through an exercise. I'll be quick about this because I know we want to leave time for public comment. We have basically sized up, bringing down and burying the power lines from Black Rock to 2 poles past the hardware store, 1 pole past the Youngsford Place, the driveway entry, and then all the way down to the gas station.
Oh, wow.
We went full menu. We said, and they said, well, what about this feature? We said, yes, include it. What if we do this? Yes, include it. We asked them to give us everything so we understand the absolute sort of most extreme scenario. What will it take and what will it cost?
Mhm.
I will tell you, we were assigned an A team from Pico. They were very thoughtful, very quick, and also came up with a plan of execution that is over a much shorter amount of time than you would imagine, and is respectful of the residents and of the commercial businesses and when to do the work. It's a big number.
I'll bet.
We now have it. We understand what it looks like, and we understand some of the options that exist within it. We've put it on a shelf. We're going to work on this project, or we're going to work on this detail, and then we're going to take it off the shelf and figure out how to incorporate it. But we needed to get to that number to understand what will drive it, what's the most extreme scenario, and what are all the features, and then we're going to go in and find the adjustments. It is still very much a priority for us and a consideration for us. We thought it was going to be much longer to get to that number. We got it. And now we're going to focus on this and then come back to it. But it's on the list.
Okay.
It's on the list.
So I guess first we can take public comment in the room. Actually, either podium would work. And if anyone is online and wants to make a comment, feel free to click the hand raise button. And after we hear from everyone in the room, we'll call on you individually.
Oh, Gillen again. This is incredible. Wow. And I think I'm going to start calling it sort of historic Gladwyne. And Mr. Franks, as always, your input initially has obviously given them a lot to work with, and your thoughtful comments today are great. Just a couple of comments that I had recorded. One of my favorites was your reference to the guidelines, which I think somebody called the guidelines for buildings in a historic context. And I really liked that because that's what HARB is looking at, and especially with this project. You supplemented with some incredible, significant research that you did. You engaged the community, and your focus on where the Act 167, in particular, the Historic District Act, focuses on massing and scale and form, which, you know, we got into a little bit with the visual impact and the trees. You know, that's where districts are supposed to operate, is what does it really look and feel like? I do, you know, going back to what Greg had said about, you know, everything is connected and there are other processes, you know, tree replacement, stormwater management, traffic studies, all of those go through, you know, the regular processes. And I think some of those come up in tentative sketch and then in preliminary plan, and lighting falls under another section of our ordinance. I would ask, have you looked at the township's sustainability plan? I hope you will look in particular, and it relates back to what Mr. Franks ended with, the MO section, my personal favorite, which is the mobility section of the sustainability plan. There's a lot of really good stuff there. And in addition to the good word soulful, I think my word is thoughtful. This is, you guys have done such great work. And I think, you know, this is a very big project. It's also well-financed. This is Gladwyne. This is the Yass family's gift to the community. And this is the talent of Halden House and all of your partners, especially the landscape architect. We are so blessed to have this gift. And I think it reinforces for me the idea of some preservation in some places within our community. We can't preserve every building or rehabilitate every building and in all of our neighborhoods, but where do we want to be able to invest financially, and also the talent of our community? And I think this really is one of those places, when you bring in the historic markers, that's just going to solidify this idea of historic Gladwyne, and I'm really thankful for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to say, I'm Ed Lewis, for anybody who doesn't know me, Ed Lewis. I'm resident at 942 Youngsford Road. I was on the HARB thing from its beginning. Unfortunately, I am hearing impaired, and I have missed a lot of what was said this morning, but I've had to read it from the drawings and take in what I have. And I have to say, first of all, I think you've come a long way. This thing is going in the right direction. And I like the idea of restoring the historic buildings and bringing down the overhead wires if we can. That would be a great improvement. But there are things that disturb me being an architect. I know you approach a project at the beginning, you have to deal with the parameters. And the one thing you have here in this Crossroads Village is that there is a existing zoning thing that has been here and has a history of, and if that is broken, it sets an awful precedent for the rest of the township. Also, that applies to the historic district regulations. So, and while that 946 property is not a historic building, it was put in there as to complete the structure of the village, the street. And it was specifically designed to respect the existing trees were there, and it had acted as a buffer zone to the commercial from the residential. And the green space is used as part of the stormwater treatment process from the circle all the way down and plugs into the township and goes down to the river. those things, oh, and also, I think any study of downtown crossroads Gladwyne has to begin with an overview of the greater area, where the park is, where the schools are, where um, the gas station, all those things, and the traffic, the exterior traffic that we have going through here, and the local traffic, all those things have to be considered first before we get to building masses and details and so on. It's all commendable that you are focusing on those things, but that comes sort of down the lane. You have to have the basics solved at the beginning. Traffic, pedestrian access, and the green, the existing trees, and reinforced with new vegetation. So go to it.
Okay, and oh, yes. And again, if anyone online would like to speak, click the raise hand button and we'll call on you after everyone else in the room.
My name is Vivina Lewis, and I'm a 60-year resident of downtown Gladwyne. And I must say that you've covered an enormous amount of territory from when we heard you in January at the elementary school. But there is one thing that came up today. Are you going to, the new homeroom, is that going to be at street level?
No, it's not.
It is.
It is,
So,
it is not.
it is not.
So the current building sits up
Yes,
higher, and so.
right.
It is, I'm not sure if does that grade come up at all from where it is existing, or it's really close to where it is existing? It's similar height to where it is today.
Oh, okay. So, but how do you get up to it? I didn't see any steps the way there are now.
Right, so there's gonna be,
So it's fully accessible from the parking lot side here. This green space down here is at grade with the street. So
Right.
ADA accessibility up here, and then this ramp brings you up over
There is
from
a
this
ramp
side. Yep.
therefore.
And then you can see
Okay.
steps right here to get you up to this level.
Okay.
I think it's also important to note that there are not steps between the library property and this park either. So it creates accessibility from basically all sides, all corners. You'll be able to arrive to it without steps.
Okay. I must also say that to me, the parking lot, apart from the fact that it would come into my backyard, and that would be very disturbing. But for me, the parking lot is not a problem because I walk everywhere to Gladwyne, in Gladwyne. I don't need the parking. I leave my car and I go to the post office, I go to the market, I go to church, and I go to the library. From the library, I actually go through Youngsford Place. So for me, it's not a problem. But I understand that for other people, it is a problem. And for me, it is a personal problem. Thank you.
Briefly, yeah.
In the parking thing, I think you should look at the overall of the four quadrants of and look at the possibility of shared parking. And that would be that somebody can park in one quadrant and walk across the street and go to another stop and so on. And that reinforces the community. So, but if we look at the shared parking and then connect it with pedestrian walkways, we'd have an excellent solution.
Yeah, good point.
We actually are looking at hours of operation. That future tenant down here, we are considering as more of an evening tenant so that that would allow for more parking during the day. So it's something we are considering as well.
That little club place called again, that has all the trucks. The guardhouse, yes. The guardhouse. You might want to be careful that or just find that their evening folks are parking in the other parking lot, because if you've ever driven in that parking lot, it's a nightmare.
Which parking lot are you
The
talking?
guardhouse parking lot.
I'm sure there'll be people parking in this new lot.
Yeah.
They're going to the guardhouse. Yeah.
So we do have an online commenter, Steve, and you should be able to speak now, Steve. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, I like.
Could you just start out by introducing yourself and saying where you live?
Yes, my name's Steve Lund. I'm a resident of the Youngsford Place complex.
Thank you.
And as I heard the original plan, there was going to be like a new restaurant where I can go and watch the game and have a beer and have a meal. And I'd like to hear more about that, about where it's going to be and if it's going to be and how it's going to be. And I know it's not going to be a chain restaurant, but is it going to be like a Crackle Barrel or a Thank God It's Friday? Or is it going to be anything?
Steve, this is Andre. Just to be respectful of everyone's time here and sort of, where that falls in sort of the, in this particular discussion on, May 18th, we will be presenting, publicly, with GCA at Gladwyne Elementary, and I would, encourage you to come there. There is a restaurant. We have not lost that sort of intention. It will play the game. It will not be Cracker Barrel. So,
Darn.
but I don't think that intention has not been lost. We just, there are particular things to talk about here, and we just didn't want to bring that into the fold of this conversation today.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, and that's all I see online. So I guess May 18th is your next stop for public meetings.
Yes, that's right.
Great.
Any further comment, anyone?
All right, thank you, everyone.
I do have, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah,
There's so many like sort of high level discussions, so I didn't want to like get into the weeds because again, that seems to be sort of later, but I did have a slight concern that maybe a couple of my comments about building additions to the historic structures might have been misinterpreted. So I would will be making further comment on those additions, just so that I think all the programmatic space that you've got as far as the level and the square footage that's in there is all certainly very doable, but maybe some of the gable forms might be reconfigured slightly. And so again, I think it's a little bit of the weeds at the moment, but I just wanted to.
Is there just so that we can, and maybe not just right now, but it would be very helpful to hear that feedback, because our intention is to come back sort of formally after this. And so if there's any opportunity to get that feedback either here or in some other sort of medium, that would be very helpful.
Since I think my comment might have been misconstrued as far as gables and sheds, shed roofs, I'd be happy to draw some very simple line diagrams, more clearly expressing my comments so that maybe they weren't in, and I'd share them with everybody first too.
So I want to just add on to that comment. I had written down, and so talking about the new plan, the new building, and forgot to mention the view of the back of what is now the pharmacy, the Delaware Market building. The addition looks as bigger than the existing building. And it's supposed to be secondary to the historic resource, but it looks almost larger. And I'm wondering if you could, what helps with that, if you can step it in. If we go back to that slide, and it could be the viewpoint that it's from, of course, but
I think that that's, I had similar comments on both of the way those sort of extrusions were occurring. I think there's different ways to
So
More
the-
traditional ways, yeah.
So the bottom right is the one that kind of stood out to me. It just, it appears larger and bigger in scale and massing, and it makes the Delaware Market Building look a bit diminutive.
And I think you could break that up so that if you take that triple window that's across the back and then the gable is actually just over the two of them. And so it's a smaller form, maybe the same slope, kicks and it heads back to the main roof gable. And then that last 10 or 12 feet or whatever it is that's on sort of the bottom right here, just has a sort of a shed roof that connects to that smaller gable. That's a little bit more sort of traditional addition forms onto the original historic core that suddenly, you know, the programmatic space is all still there. It's still two floors of full space, but the volumes appear smaller and more, you know, the massing is a little bit more broken up.
So is this, okay, this is the pharmacy building, is it not? Yeah.
Yes.
Is this being custom made for the pharmacy, and does every one of those, I mean, it is a big addition out the back. Does that all, is there intended use for that, or is that going to be some sort of open office space? How do you envision that?
So we did inventory of Perry's Pharmacy and essentially moved all categories over and made sure we didn't miss any footprint. And this is the footprint he needs to operate successfully out of the building. I would say that that feedback is really helpful. Our eye also continues to go there and question if it's too big. So we would love to take another stab at breaking that mass up. Agreed. Yeah.
I think the addition to the other building, whose name I can't remember at the moment, not the exact same issue, but I don't feel that the relationship of these forms is quite suited or as similar to sort of the traditional forms that we find on historic resources. And I don't have an immediate answer, but I would certainly continue to think about it further. And I wouldn't want you to think that without additional comments that everybody's fully on board with exactly what those forms are.
Any further
Yeah, I
comments?
mean, it might be helpful if we come back with a few studies because we have many. This is one, but it might be helpful to react to.
Always.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you again for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we adjourn?